I know what my audience like. I did some independent films with Master P. A lot of those movies did really well.
I'm ambitious, I'm a hustler. I have my own lane.
That's the thing about comedy. You wake up every day, you don't know if you're funny that day.
Welcome to the program. Welcome to the program. Hey, we made it back. We made it a whole nother time again. Here we are. Welcome to the program. Let's go live with Lamont King. I'm Lamont King, and we are now live. Let's go. Let's go. Good to see you. You made it back, man. We're alive. We survived. It's a whole new week, man. Happy holidays to you and yours. I hope your weekend was crisp and refreshing. I hope you did everything you needed to do. Enjoyed your little break. Summer is not officially over. I just made this decree. Summer is not over. Given the year that we've had in 2020, I'm not extending it. I'm officially letting you know that you can. It's whatever you want it to be. So if you feel like wearing a white belt, do so indefinitely until further notice. If you feel like wearing white pants and white shoes, feel free indefinitely to further notice. Due to here's the disclaimer, due to the year that we've been having, pretty much at this point, do what the fuck you want. That's what it is. All rules have been suspended. I don't care that it's after Labor Day. Summer's still going for me. As long as it's warm to mild weather, it is still summertime, and I'm still doing summertime things. There's no, there's the lines have been blurred, so I'm playing it by ear, and this is what we're doing. All right, good to see y'all, man. Welcome to the program. This is what we do each and every Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time. Shout out to everybody on the West Coast checking in, and worldwide. You viewing us, thumbs up if you're viewing us in the Humor Mill app, which is available on Roku Fire Stick. They got some shows over there. Check them out. Google it. Do your Googles. Download the app in case you don't already have it. We have narrowed my locations down to one Facebook page and YouTube. We're moments away from having 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Help me get there. So if you see something, share something. That's the motto here. If you see something, share something. If this video is coming across your timeline live, make sure you share it and repost so everybody can watch. Don't be stingy. And of course, we are broadcasting live from where is it? The newly remodeled. Oh, the mouse ain't moving. Where the mouse at? Oh, here we go. The newly remodeled Drunken Fruit Studios. Here's a look at the current stats right now. Drunken Fruit. It's fruit. It's adult candy. Delicious. DM me if you need to get that. If you need to get some in your life, I'll put it like that. And also, we are 100% viewer supported by viewers like you. And we do that at the Cash App, $ Lamont King 06. Slide us loose 1, 5, 10, 20. And you can subscribe and get all our content in one place. Patreon.com, Mr. Lamont King. Yes, there it is. That's pretty much the breakdown of the show. Trending, if you're watching for the first time, what we do here is trending topics, celebrity interviews, hilarious commentary, and interesting people. We got an interesting person coming up a little bit later today as our guest on the show. I saw this TED Talk about a year ago that really set with me. And then I saw it going around recently, and I was like, I got to get dude on. So we'll talk about that very shortly. Shout out to the Peanut Gallery, you and yours. I see y'all tuning in. We had to take a hiatus yesterday. We took a break. It was holiday. I was working on a holiday. I went and shot golf and played tennis because that's what type of America I'm living in. That's what I did with my break. Good to see you, John Watson from All Fun and Games on Fridays, and our executive producer, Mr. Clarkson, on the check-in. Yes, it's already winter in Denver today. Yesterday was summer. Today is winter. So they went from 80 degrees to possibly 8 inches of snow. And that should tell you what type of year is happening. So, all the rules are suspended. That's just what I'm going to go with. All the rules have been suspended on what you commonly know as things of what you should be doing. So don't question me about nothing. Don't, hey man, why you so-and-so such and such? You're not supposed to. I don't hear none of that. None of that stands right now. All right, some quick headlines, man. Let me get to it. I saw something interesting this weekend. Joe Biden, man. So they asked him, would he take the vaccine? So, all right, let's back up. So the president is talking shit. He's saying that he trying to have a vaccine that's going to miraculously be approved and arrived and ready to the marketplace on or around November 3rd. On or around November 3rd. So they asked Biden, of course, next time they saw him, Mr. Biden, would you take it if the president had it? And I'll show you what he said, because it did not surprise me. I think it was one of the greatest answers he could have said. Well, let's bring this in. Let's watch this together, shall we? Here we go.
On this Labor Day, Joe Biden met with labor union members in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
You're not the best friend Labor's ever had in the White House.
After the meeting, he was asked if he'd take a coronavirus vaccine if one becomes available this year.
I would want to see what the scientists said. If I could get a vaccine tomorrow, I'd do it. If it cost me the election, I'd do it. We need a vaccine. We need it now.
His running mate.
All right, so let's stop right there. I don't really need to know what his running mate said. When I tell you Joe Biden, listen, I'm not leaning towards anybody. I'm not suggesting anything. I ain't telling you what you're supposed to do. When I tell you that was the best answer he could have ever answered, that was an amazing, that's 50 years in politics answer right there. I'm gonna wait first. Let's break it down. First, I'm gonna wait to see what the scientists say. All right. So Joe, you smart. You're thinking, man. All right. You gonna defer to the scientists because that sounds like that makes sense. Because the main dude, he's doing none of that. Then secondly, if it was made available tomorrow, I'm taking it. Okay. Confidence. You reinstilling confidence. I'm a citizen and I'm watching you following your lead. Okay, that was a good move. And then third said, even if it cost me the election. Slow clap. That's magical political shipness. That was the great, even if he don't believe a word of what he's saying. That was the best thing he could have ever said. I'm falling on the sword for America. Pause. I'm taking one for the team. Americans, if you're unsure, I'm sure. Now, I'm your guy. Man, if you're on the fence now, after that, you tripping. That was a miraculous answer. I don't even believe it, but it sounded good. And I don't believe if one is made available, that's the one that you're going to get. I don't believe it, but it sounded good. Joe Biden. Shout out to Joe Biden, man. With the professional answers on the quick, on the swift. All right, some other news. They're saying how some colleges are closing merely days after opening because of coronavirus spikes. And this article from the Wall Street Journal says that sending college kids home when infections rise may be the worst possible choice to do. And it goes on to say, I'm not going to bring it up, but we can talk about it for a quick second. It goes on to say that if indeed there's a spike because of contact in close quarters. The first few days of these college kids being on campus and partying and doing all that other stuff. If you send them home and they're in that what do you call it? Not hibernation, that little incubation period, the little 12 to 14 day incubation period, and now you're sending all these possible infectants home, then it could cause a spread back in their local area, and they say that could be worse. So why not follow the lead of the NBA and make these college environments bubbles, make them bubbles, and make them sweat it out, wait it out, not sweat it out, but I mean, like, if there's a spike, then all right, everybody in their room, we tested y'all, everybody's in the room, you stay there until till further notice, until we get it under control, but don't send them home. It's because if you got a spike on campus and you send all these college kids home, then guess what? They're taking it home with them, unbeknownst to them. So I think that's pretty problematic. And again, we see 80-degree temperatures in Denver just after, 8 inches of snow potentially in Denver just after we saw 80-degree temperatures. So there's that. All right, trending topics, ladies and gentlemen. All right, moving on. All right, so our first guest, man. This is why I wanted to do this. So I saw a TED Talk that came across my radar on YouTube. It was maybe a year or so ago, year and a half ago. And there was a guy, his name is Michael Smith, referring to himself as White Mike in the video. And I thought it was very interesting, very compelling. And the clip that I saw, I didn't see the whole particular TED Talk, but the clip I saw, it happened to be about 5 years old. And he was making some strong remarks about how black murder is normal. Right. So that was the caption that drew me in. And then I saw what he was talking about. And the portion of the talk that I saw was about urban radio, urban music, and specifically and how the programming is deliberate and detrimental. And it took me back. And it took me back to my days in radio. And I was like, oh, yeah. Next time I get a platform, next time I get a recurring show, I said, this is one of the first guys I'm gonna try to reach out to see if I can get him on the show. Because I'll tell you when he comes on, he said so many things that I've been saying for years, and to hear it come out of somebody else's mouth in a different form, in a different platform, and then have like 1 million views, I was like, yes, finally, there's somebody else that gets it. All right. So without further ado, let me bring into the program. Let's go live, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome White Mike Smith. Good to see you. What's going on?
Man, hey, how are you? How are you doing? Thank you for having me on. It's White Mike Smith. That's a 30-year-old thing. I think I was probably 18 or 19, maybe 17 when I first heard it, and here it is. It's good. I'll answer to that and a lot of other things.
Well, I hesitated on calling you that, but only because I know the video is old, and I know your life could have completely changed in the last 5 years. So you could be on a whole nother page right now. But
That's great.
Yeah. All right. So before I get into my story further, on my story of being in radio and the TED Talk, just give our viewers just a quick background on yourself, how you grew up, where you're from, and what led you to ministry.
Yeah, so I, they say some people are raised Baptist, some people are raised Methodist. I was raised heathen, so I didn't go to church. Nobody brought me to church. My mother was made to go to her church her whole life and refused when she got 18. She said, I'll never go back. And if I ever have kids, I'll never make them go. So I, for the first 15, 16 years of my life, was never in church. She had a radical conversion to Christianity, kind of a Damascus Road type deal that affected my father, that affected me. And somewhere around 16 years old, I felt strangely a call into ministry. I was living in Orlando, Central Florida, just outside of Orlando, in a kind of an all-white world. My school, my work, my family, my home. And my mother ended up meeting a guy in Atlanta on business who was part of an all-black church on the south side of Atlanta. And they had kind of a really supernatural meeting. Their family connected with our family. And I really wasn't sure about what I wanted to do, which life I wanted to live. Anyway, this guy who she met on business comes down to our house in Orlando. He says, I know why we met. I didn't meet to meet you. I met to meet your son. And my mom was like, you mean the devil boy? I don't think so. I don't think
Oh,
that's why and so about 6 months later, I found myself in College Park, south side of Atlanta, just down there near the airport.
hmm
Uh, and my life was totally changed. About a year later, I dropped out of high school, relocated from my all-white world in Orlando to College Park. At the time, there's about 3,000, maybe 1,500 members. I was one of 5 or 6 white people. It grew to over 20,000 members. I was maybe one of 200 white people there, and that kind of started my journey. So went into ministry, youth pastor, associate pastor, traveling around the world. Started a church a few years later, about a decade later, my wife and I in Jacksonville. And it was not until I got to Jacksonville that my kind of Orlando to Atlanta experience started to make sense. I started to become aware of, sensitive to systemic issues, and it kind of wouldn't leave me alone from there. So it wove its way into the pulpit early on in series, racism and religion, systemic issues, which kind of started, illuminating all the symptoms of it, whether it be from homicide to poverty to politics to redistricting, et cetera. And the music conversation became a kind of an easy way to highlight the things that we accept as normal in our everyday life and never question why they are that way. So that's the 30-second version of the 30-year journey.
Okay, absolutely, very in depth. So basically, in a nutshell, you grew up in and around the black church.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was taken in as family. You know, my spiritual father, my spiritual mother, all of my coworkers, the people I worked with, the people I worked under, the people that worked for me. I ate dinner every day, breakfast, lunch, lived roommates, worked at McDonald's on Old National Highway. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
my entire world was black, and I was family.
As a man of faith and a member of the cloth, what could you, to some of our viewers who may not be able to relate to the black church experience, what are some big overarching differences between white worship and black worship from
So
your experience?
that's an interesting thing. So I don't really have a white church experience. I mean, I did not go to church. I had a couple friends who were Episcopalian, a couple friends who were Catholic. My family, some of my mother's side is Baptist, but I really didn't know much about it. So going into the church on the south side of Atlanta was my introduction to church. I remember about a year and a half after graduating from ministry school, I was sitting on the pulpit, and behind the preacher they have all these big chairs, leather seats, and I found myself sitting up there. I was a young youth pastor, and I remember looking around. They were giving an altar call, and we stood up, and there were people coming down to get saved. And I remember clapping, and I looked around the room, out into the balcony, and I was like, I am the only white guy in this entire building right now. And it was not until like a year and a half in that I even realized that it was a different experience. So I don't really have a white church experience. Of course, I hear all the comedians and things talk about that, and the different kind of comedy things. But my experience is it's family, and again, I don't know how. So my spiritual dad came out of a what you may consider as an AME, really traditional church, a lot of hooping, a lot of hollering, and kind of morphed out of that into more of a teaching style. So I've been to the Full Gospel Baptist Convention. I've been to the African Methodist Episcopal. I've been to the Faith. I don't really have a black church experience so much as the only church experience is all I know. And when I moved to Jacksonville, my church was split, down the middle. It was about 50% black, 40% white, 10% a mix of everybody else. So I've always been around diversity in that. And I don't know. I don't want to get over spiritual, but it's kind
Yeah.
of, it just fits. It's maybe there's a purpose to it. And maybe there's a responsibility and accountability to share those experiences that I have.
Now, the TED Talk that we're specifically going to deal with is dated 5 years. So I
Yeah.
think you mentioned 2014 is when it happened, but it's dated 5 years on YouTube. Was at that time, was that a thing that you were touring with? Was that a talk piece that you had been taking around, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so a guy in my church, a black guy in my church, just a dear precious man, ran for sheriff of Jacksonville, and we supported him, we encouraged him. He's a great man, former law enforcement officer. He ran, and when the election results came out that night, he lost and came in third place by like a mile. The incumbent guy, won, and then a challenger, didn't even get close. And then this guy, this minister of my church, was kind of at the bottom. And it wasn't until I looked at the newspaper the next day after we kind of, consoled and encouraged each other after that. But he had won every district in the northwest part of Jacksonville, which they called the murder zone, where all the murders were taking place, where all the craziness was going on in the news every day. He had won every single district in that area, and not because he was black and they're predominantly black, but because there's a disconnect with what was going on in law enforcement. They were 100% of those districts were pleading for a change. But when Jacksonville consolidated back in the 60s, people where I lived, way out in the suburbs, I lived in a fancy house down on the river, and where I lived was making the decisions for people who lived in this, what they call the murder zone at the time. I hate that phrase, but that was the term for it. And that was the moment that I realized the systemic issues. And I started to address them in my church. And I said, look, I'm going to write an open letter to the sheriff. I just said this one day, and I'm going to say he should appoint as an undersheriff or a special officer this guy named Reggie Davis in his new administration, because he is apparently not the sheriff for everyone. And that kind of started the idea. And my idea to post a letter, take out a full page ad in the letter in the paper, turned into a 10-page insert on systemic issues, on the hypocrisy, corporate dissociative disorder, all the things reflected in music, reflected in generational poverty, HIV, etc. And that's what kind of started it. So weaving this into my church, teaching my church about it, the TED people reached out to me. They said, hey, we're having TEDx here in Jacksonville, and would you consider giving a talk? And what's strange and sad and gross and disgusting is they approached me at the end of 2013, going into 2014. They asked me what I would like to talk about, and I told them I'd like to talk about these systemic issues. And I actually had the thought, Lamont, that, man, I wonder if this will still be relevant by the time October rolls around, 10 months from now. I mean, Jacksonville was the murder capital of Florida for a couple of years there, but I wonder if that will still be going on by the time the talk comes. And what's gross now is people are finding this talk. It's circulating around everywhere. It's 5 years old, 6 years old, October 2014. They posted it in 15. And you could almost believe I did it last week.
Yes.
And that's the heartbreaking issue, is that the normalcy has not decreased. Now, I'm encouraged about some of the recent happenings, and really the talk itself was about nonviolence and the new nonviolence and the necessity for violence to move the power structure, and how I believe the power structure's soul is lost in that. But I'm sad that here we are, you and I, 6 years later.
Yes.
Next month will be 6 years, and we're like, oh yeah, man, I could have said it a month ago or 2 months ago. So that's I've never given it before, and man, I hate that every couple of years it gets breathed on, and another 4 million views get shown of a clip, because it's as deep today as it was 50, 60 years ago.
So you said you had never given it before that time? Wow. So it's basically a sermonette, because they came to you from your work in the ministry. So it's a sermonette.
Right. And they give you 19 minutes, and it's just I talk 250 words a minute with gust up to 300, man. And I did my best to get it out, and apparently something in there touches some hearts. So I give God praise.
All right. So at this moment, I'm gonna there's some specific elements to it. Is the reason why I'm having you on. So I'm gonna go ahead and play a little bit of it. I believe it's the beginning, where you talk about how directly how music and music programming, commercial music programming, is impacted. So let me play this clip real quick, and then I'll get into what I wanted to get into. All right, here we go. This is from his TED Talk in 2014. Black Murder is Normal. Michael Smith.
I learned a lot of beautiful things about a lot of beautiful people. I learned a lot of ugly things about myself, and I learned a lot of dark things about the nation in which we live. But I also learned that I, being White Mike, specifically the white part, have a lot of power. White Mike has a question today, and that's this. How come when you turn on the radio in Jacksonville, or New Orleans, or Chicago, or Little Rock, the only people on the radio that talk about how great it is to kill each other are black? How come that exists? 15 stations on a dial, go up, go down. The only people on the radio bragging about getting automatic weapons, gunning each other down, are black. This right here is a song. My pastoral vocabulary won't let me read the title, but I will read this. Catch a young black male not paying attention at the red light with your AK-47. Let me see you shoot it. You're a killer, you're a killer, you're a killer. You're a killer, black male. Let me see you prove it. Why does this exist? I'll take it even further, because a lot of time racism exists and what's we don't know, what we don't see. Where are the white killers on the radio? Where are the white AK-47 shooters? Where are the white drug dealers? Where are the white people on the radio that brag about what it's like to murder witnesses before trial? The truth is they don't exist. And the question is why? Why don't they exist? Do white people not kill people? Do white people not use AK-47s to shoot each other? I mean, we know, do white people not do drugs? Do they not deal drugs? Of course they do. But why is it that it doesn't make it to our mainstream radio? Why is it that we don't hear it hundreds of times a day in hundreds of cities across the nation, thousands of plays that say the idea that a black guy would kill another black guy is something to be celebrated, something to be romanticized? And why is it that white people don't do it? And maybe it's because there's no white audience for it. Or maybe it's because it's not really marketable. Maybe because can't get sponsors. I don't know why it is. Or maybe it's because it's just not the white man's role. Or maybe when white people get up and talk about being drug dealers and AK-47 killers, maybe it's even sicker than that. Maybe when white people do it, they're accused of acting black.
All right, so it's already heavy, and there's so many layers to it. And one thing I was struck, I'm so impressed at your ability to weave humor into certain aspects of this talk, because it helps to deliver the message, especially when it's a strong, hard message like that. We don't know each other. We're just meeting right now. But I'm a professional stand-up comedian. And one of the reasons why I got into comedy was I was raised in a very conscious household, very radical. And one of the things that I knew at an early age was, in order to get those strong messages through, comedy helps. And when I saw this talk and I watched it from second one to the last second, I was like, perfection. Like he got all the points he needed. He got a couple, laugh lines in there, and you're dialed in because you don't know what's coming next, and you're just question after question, fact after fact. So let me take it a little ways back. One of the best youth sermons that I can remember, I was in high school. We were going to, vacation Bible school and with youth church. I was real active with that. And the youth pastor did a speech or a sermon on music, the power of music. But he broke it down from a scientific standpoint. And that never left me, because he broke it down about how harmonic frequencies and different music makes you do different things, and the devil lives in the music and God is in the word, and like in a way that I was like, oh, that's interesting, that's fascinating. I never heard about that and heard it like that, and that always stayed with me. So I always understood the power of music as a spirit. So that when later I got into radio, commercial urban radio, I just heard things differently than everybody else did in the building. And I was on a morning show. We were syndicated in 56 cities. This is from 1998 to 2004. Music was changing. Urban music was changing. Hip hop was on the verge of turning into trash. And I can literally remember being in the meetings and speaking up against certain songs that were laid out as, this is what we're adding next week. We want you guys' opinion. And I would speak out and give commentary, and I would literally get scoffed at and get laughed at, because I would say some of the very things that you talked about in your talk. And that's why it was like, I gotta reach out to this guy, because I can remember holding those similar views, but not being able to articulate it as well as you did. But urban radio, it always struck me how there are certain songs, and I tell people to this day, listen, just dial in. There are certain songs that get played different ways based on what station they're in.
Sure.
And so they'll take out certain words or phrases, same song, but on the so-called hit music station or the urban station, it'll be edited. And I would tell my friends, I'd be like, you got to ask yourself, why is that? Why would they feel the need to do that if it's offensive on free commercial radio that you're not paying for to a certain group of people, but the assumption is that it's not offensive to another group? Why is that? That's problematic. But we're born and raised, especially of a hip hop generation, we're born and raised to accept it. This is our music. I'm against censorship, blah, 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 right? That argument always comes up. That's how I used to get laughed out the meetings. So it was like, well, this is what people want. You got to play what they want. I'm like, but who has a soundtrack to murder? Like, you're
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
causing me to dance in the club at 2 gunshots to the head.
Yeah.
And it's just,
Yeah.
it's as you get older and you start to look back on it, I was raised with NWA and all of that. So there was a time and place for that. But when you look back on it, you're like, wow, that's borderline mental illness that I have a soundtrack of murder that's pushed to me as entertainment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so as I got older, I used to have these conversations. Well, what could I do about it? And the biggest piece of your talk is the most necessary, and I would like you to speak on it. Is probably the most necessary piece that still could happen today, as we've seen in this 2020 summer of civil rights, is if we all smartened up, woke up, and went after the advertisers.
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna. The machine is too strong. You're not gonna change the artist who came from nothing, who got his mother her first house, millions in the bank. You're not going to change that. You're not going to change the labels or the machines. But what you can change is from a sponsorship standpoint. Hit them in the pockets.
Yeah.
You can't. This is what I listen to, and my kids are in the car and we're taking to school. I will no longer allow you to play that on free radio. And if you're going to continue to play, I'm going after the sponsors.
Yeah.
So how did you arrive at that thesis or that part of your talk, and why do you think that that's important? That angle of it.
Well, it's Lamont. It's and again, not trying to be overspirited. So it's Babylon. So the idea is the scriptures teach that the judgment of God will be upon those that choose. If you read the end time books, etc., the judgment of God will be on those who choose money over morals. And that is the core of what's happening. It's mammon. It's the god of this world. It's what makes Clear Channel and all these other things go around. And the fact that Radio One, the fact that you got laughed out of the room at even the suggestion that there might be something wrong about a young black male or a young black female, trivializing, minimizing, or glorifying the death of another young black man or woman, or the hypersexualization of a young black man or woman, the fact that you get laughed out of the room for even suggesting that there's a problem reveals how deeply ingrained the idea of black hypersexuality and black hypercriminality are in the American conscience. And that is the issue, that to bring it up, that to suggest that maybe this 15-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, we should not put the onus on him or her to know that what's being said here is an expression of sickness. But if you're a 60-year-old, $100 million net worth CEO who's not raised in America's gutter, nourished on America's feces, that you have cultural, social, economic feces, that you have sense to know, this isn't right. And please understand, I'm not suggesting that, poverty or trauma, deprives people of their ability to act out of conscience. Of course, we know that's not true. If poverty and discomfort created lack of moral conscience, then you would expect richness to create clarity of moral conscience, which we know that doesn't happen either. So, and the idea, and I've heard it, and I'd be careful naming names here, but I've heard it from every artist. Well, I'm just describing what's going on. Don't ask me to be accountable. I'm just talking about it. But there's a difference in glorifying it. And this is what I think the vast majority of white people in the power structure believe, is that this is the highest a young black man can rise to, that a young black man cannot have a conscience and speak, or a young black man cannot make the basis of his music on that which is uplifting and positive. It has to be trivializing the destruction and the sickness, or we get what we see with so many artists, a hybrid, where you have kind of this hybrid artist, which is on one hand denigrating black women, devaluing black life, and on the other hand speaking of high morals and conscience. So you take these prophets and poets and Babylon and Mammon, ask them to compromise even who they are, And then what will you do for money? And you know as well as I do, if you're not going to be making money, then you're just not going to get the play. You're not going to get the exposure. And America has such an appetite for the criminalization and hypersexualization and the normalcy of it being associated with blackness that again we don't even pause to acknowledge it. And the same way right now, I don't know what city you're in. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
I'm in DC.
You're in DC. I mean, if we were just to pull out the photographs of all the people who have been murdered in the last 2 months and all the people that have been arrested for murder in your city in the last 2 months, I'd bet you the entire cost of your streaming and broadcast equipment, what the faces look like, because it's this systemic millstone that churns along in the background. It's like I said in the talk, the racism. See, prejudice comes out of a human heart and mind. Discrimination comes by a human hand and action. But racism is just addressed in the unchecked and unchallenged normal. That this is just normal. There's not been a year that I've been alive. I'm 47 years old, in which black men were not leading in either perpetration or victimization and homicide. And I'm not talking about a factor of 1, 2, or 3 to 1. I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1.
Mhm.
That to suggest it ought not be that way, to suggest that that's a symptom of fallen dominoes of systemic cultural racism that exists from the very moments that we begin to preach about black men, black women, their animalism, their violence, their propensity to destruction. This gets ingrained, and we're not shocked by it. We're entertained by it. So that when I saw a young lady on Jimmy Fallon. She's from Chicago. She has a song that was a YouTube song, called "Try Me." This dear young girl, who knows what all her story is, but it's you can try me. I forgot, paraphrase. I'll kill you and your whole MF family. Don't think this is a song. This is real. I dare you to try me. Blah blah blah.
Oh, Days.
Yeah, and the artistry. Yeah, I didn't want to say the name, but yeah, Days. No, you're fine. Yeah, I don't. I want to respect your show. The artistry is brilliant. The poetry is brilliant. But she got on NBC Universal Television. Jimmy Fallon sang this song literally and said, "Look, this is not a song. I really will kill you and your whole MF family. Try me." And Jimmy Fallon walked over, and I have no issue with Jimmy Fallon. Put his arm around and said, "Oh man, you're just the best. There's loaf, everybody, give it up."
Right.
No one can even hear.
Yes. Right.
No one can even hear what was just said. And I heard this from Brother Minister Farrakhan, and it really touched me. Because he said, and he was talking about this, and I've never thought of this until about a month ago. But watch what happens now. So we come out with Black Lives Matter. We come out with the rights of citizens, that citizens' rights should not be trampled upon, that the state should not be able to lightly take a life or deprive of property or happiness. And we come out and champion citizens' rights on behalf of all people. And the immediate pushback is, yes, but look at black on black crime. Now, there are two totally different issues. One doesn't touch the other. The rights of citizens, according to our own founding documents, are sacrosanct. They are holy. The only sin that the nation recognizes is that when the state tramples upon the citizen's right to due process, etc., they call it a transgression against God. But when you bring that up, and this is Brother Minister Farrakhan's point, was that the challenge that black life should be worth something, that it should be able to stand holy and defensible as a right, is degraded and eroded by the normalcy of black murder, by the normalcy of black perceptions of black criminality and hypersexuality, so that when you say, hey, this guy was choked out on the street, I don't care what he did 5 minutes before, I don't care what he did 10 days before, a citizen of the United States, life was taken unjustly by an agent of the state. This is the highest transgression you could have inside our country. It's been so normalized that he was not fully equally right to his citizenship rights, because what do? We point to where black murder is normal. So the music, I don't think, contributes to the issue. It contributes to the apathy. It contributes to the insensitivity. It contributes to the laughter. Like, why would you say there's something wrong with this? Come on, it's just what they do. It's just what they know. And now here comes the theyness, separating the usness, keeping those who look like me in the power structure, who own the companies, the labels, the advertisers, and I would never want my brand associated with date rape. I would never want my brand associated with dogfighting. I would never want my brand associated with anything anti-gay or anti-Muslim. But when I say, would you like your brand associated with the celebration of the murder of young black men? You say, well, I mean, come on, what's wrong with that? It's so deep inside the American psyche that that's the whole point, is that the marketplace reveals what's normal. It reveals the normal. The marketplace is the canary in the coal mine. And you can't get away with things now in this thing that's arisen over the past 6 months here. You see the number of companies. Here at Toyota, we believe that Black Lives Matter.
Right,
Here at American Express, we believe.
right.
And are they doing that out of change of consciousness,
No.
or are they doing that because Mammon and Babylon says this is what you must do? And even making a change. This is what happened in our country, Lamont, is that we've never had a change in this nation as it involves the fully recognized dignity and equality of Black Americans, red Americans, brown Americans, that did not require violence. There's never been a change that's significant without some form of violence. Slavery did not end out of nonviolence. 600,000 people lost their lives. Schools were not integrated nonviolently. The National Guard stood there with guns to yet let those girls walk up those steps. Lunch counters were not integrated nonviolently. There's violence by force, but there's also violence by disruption. 4 guys in Greenville sit down, disrupt this entire business, and after 6 months, they go, you know what, we really ought to let colored people sit at our lunch counters. Was it wrong after 6 months, or was it wrong before? Did you change out of the economic violence and the violence by disruption? The bus boycott, they didn't have a change of consciousness. Well, we ought to let people sit where they want. A year and a half, 355 days of economic violence waged on the bus company. So no one knows what happened. So the power structure in America sits down on the outside, but on the inside they're standing up because they're not changing their hearts. It's being done by violence. So the TED Talk, my whole mission is the appeal to the conscience, because my concern is the power structure loses its soul. Whenever we change because we change American Express or Dick's Sporting Goods and Black Lives Matter because we know our brand can't survive not doing it.
Right.
We're not doing it based on seeing the full dignity and equality. We're doing it because the mammon and the money and Babylon dictates this is the wisest course of action. Case in point, the Redskins now changing their name. They just said 4 or 5 years ago, we will never. Ever, it'll never happen ever. And I taught a sermon on that in my church on the new nonviolence. And I said, this man is speaking the language of violence. He's saying there's no indigenous people, there's no original Americans who have enough brand or economic violence to move me. We've checked with our season ticket holders. We've checked with our advertisers. Nobody's bothered by it. But I said this 7 years ago, let people who are Black get involved and mingle. The cause for fully realized dignity and equality for Black Americans merge with the plight of indigenous peoples. And I said, watch what happens. I said, they'll come out. I said this 7 years ago. First thing they'll do is they'll say, you know what, we're going to announce a study. Then they're going to come out and say, you know what, we really think we should make a change. And I'll be doggone exactly what happened. So did the NFL change because of revelation? As Roger Goodell had insight, we should have listened to Colin Kaepernick? Or has the brand now suffered so much violence that it can't go any other way? So again, it's progress. I'm hopeful. I try not to be pessimistic, but is it really progress, or is it reaction to money, which is what drives all systemic racism? It's the core of slavery. It's the core of Jim Crow. So that's, as a theologian, that's my issue, is that as long as we keep moving by the dictates of mammon instead of a revelation of what they call the imago Dei, the fact that you are made in the likeness and image of God and are entitled to full dignity and equality, we keep following what the money says, which is why just beneath the surface, the N-word is still on these mouths. Just beneath the surface, it just takes a little bit of traffic or a little bit of Walmart interaction or a little bit of mask interaction, and you see that ugliness come out. Why? Because we've not been changing hearts over these years. We've been in forms of violence enacting change. And so that's why this conversation, these type of things are so important, because I believe the soul of the power structure hangs in the balance.
Now, but to that point, though, do you believe consciousness can be changed? I mean, that's a 100-year war, and so progress versus reactionary. Are you fine with, in this moment, in this present moment, our actions just being reactionary, like where we strategically say, all right, let's take this company down. Let's strategically take this company down.
Sure. Yeah, you have to be, because you have to be. I mean, how long are we going to wait? 100 years for minds to change? Right. I mean, I hate to say this. Yes. I mean, I'm not trying to be, but by any means necessary. I mean,
You.
if it requires the violent upheaval of systems, if it requires the violent upheaval of economics, violence by disruption, violence by economic violence, brand violence, etc. But I hate the idea of it. You have to understand, however necessary it may be, the long term gains are not good. The long term results are not good because it entrenches it. To me, all of this is a failure of the pulpit. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of who Christ is. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of the teaching of the gospel. It's a lot of games in a pulpit. It's ethnic Christianity, national Christianity, racial Christianity that's been brought into the United States. And I'm convinced that one of two things: if the church had been healthy, then the United States would not have grown like it grew. It would have grown in a healthy, dignified light. But because the church was compromised, the United States grew and the church grew, but we have lost the person and teachings of Christ in the middle of it. Christianity is entirely rooted in empathetic thought and consideration for those who are not ourselves. And Christ has never widespread failure in the pulpit. People say, well, Ellen, gay people want to get married, or the trans this, or Obama this, or, an abortion this, we're going to lose the blessing on America. The blessing on America was lost the day a man came home from church and beat another human being that he owned as property because that man took bread. Where are we trying to get back to the moral contents of America, the God's blessing on America? That's fallacy. That's not even scriptural. That's not even true. But yet those myths get perpetuated. Those in the power structure consume those myths that somehow God is with a country that has this history, that God would be with any country is not a New Testament, it's not a scriptural idea. But these things get perpetuated and they lead to apathy. And when I go into churches, predominantly white churches, and suggest, hey, something to consider here is that we've been reared in dysfunction with the idea of national, ethnic, that God is with America, that God is against this nation, or that all these kind of things, even to the idea that people that don't have Christ somehow don't have God. All these failures in theology that grew in the United States, that perpetuated this power structure, that is the reason it's so entrenched as it is. I mean, you have to understand, these guys that own these diners that segregated their lunch counters, they had pastors, and their pastors made them deacons, and no one even challenged. We have Christian people today, great theologians, who preach how Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, all these people were great men of God, led by the Spirit of God. And right there in the scripture, it says, if a man says he knows God, but does not know how to treat his fellow human being, it says that man is a liar. He does not know God. But to even say that is to somehow challenge, when you challenge racism, they think you're challenging America. When you challenge America, they think you're challenging God. And we've got to strip away God from the idea of being synonymous with America and start preaching. And again, this is my corner. This is my corner.
Right.
So yeah. So the fact
how
that
do you do that? How do you do that? Is it possible? Because that's woven into the fabric of the foundation of America.
It is.
They always talk about separation of the church and state, but there's never been a separation.
No, man, listen, this is why. So we're starting a political party. It's called the Lamb Party, and it's based on what America could be. It's America 2.0. America is stillborn. From the time it was written, that it is clearly evident. Think about this statement. It's self-evident. It needs no explanation, no verification. It is obvious to anyone who thinks that all humans are created equal and endowed by their Creator with unhindered, unlimited, irrevocable right to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
The day someone wrote that and the quill went light in ink and turned to an enslaved person and said, hey, boy, bring me some more ink in here, that was when American idea died on the table in the Second Continental Congress. It has never taken an unassisted breath from that point. And this is the deep work that needs to be done. This is why, like I say, these conversations, it takes citizens of goodwill who will champion human dignity across the board above all, that will not let the vertical, see, this is the whole point of it. And you brought the preach out of me. I never get like this. No one ever lets me get like this, but it's this idea. So the whole point of Jesus coming and rebuking the Pharisees was you're letting your vertical perception of God stand in the way of your treatment of humanity. And his only rebuke was against people that did that. So we have this idea that somehow we could be loyal to God and mistreat people, that we could be loyal to God and keep people locked in a basement. I took my kids to the Liberty Bell. You're standing looking at the Liberty Bell, looking through glass down into the ground where George Washington kept his slaves. This is how deep the reset needs to be. And it's got to happen in the church. It's got to happen in the mosque. It's got to happen in the temple, because the marketplace is one thing, but if you're not moving the millions of people who sit inside that, Walmart CEOs, I mean, all these tech CEO people that sit there inside pulpits, who inside congregations where their pastors are not preaching truth. So how do you do it? You do it by violence. But my goal is, while it's happening on one hand by violence, by brand violence, economic violence, disruptive violence, I'm reaching for the soul of the power structure. And there's an old thing like this. You say, well, 5 times 5 is 30. 30 times 10 is 300. 300 divided by 2 is 150. 150 times 5 is 750. I say, you're wrong. You say, well, you're trying to tell me 150 times 5 isn't 750. No, that's not what I'm trying to tell you. You're trying to tell me 300 divided by 2 isn't 150. That's not what I'm trying to tell you. You're trying to tell me 30 times 10 isn't 300. No, that's not what I'm trying to tell you. You must be telling me 5 times 5 isn't 30. That's what I'm telling you.
Right.
We have got to go back to the original idea of what this nation is, expose the deepest lies. I was in the Smithsonian Institute on the day before emancipation, and I was walking through, and there's a plaque that a senator, a U.S. senator, said, I hope you're ready. When these Negroes are free, I hope you're ready for more rape, more murder than you've ever seen in your entire life. That's how old the idea that blackness and criminality and hypersexuality are together. So my issue is not with music at all. I make whatever art you want. I don't care what kind of art you make, but you should not enjoy the collective goodwill of the mainstream perpetuating that which is representative of the deepest and darkest dysfunction in our psyche. That's the point. You want to make art about killing dogs, go for it. But Walmart shouldn't advertise with it, and they won't.
Right.
They will not let their name be associated with it, but they will let their name be associated with that which trivializes the value of black life.
And I feel that perspective. But my problem from being in the inside of and watching the music get made and watching it get pushed like drugs, much like drugs, watching it was and still is yeah, it could be argued as art, but it should not be free. Because if through that medium, that's a free medium. It's constant spiritual warfare. That those are vibrations coming out of your radio, going into your spirit. Constant. That shouldn't be free. I gotta pay for the R-rated premium content on TV. I gotta pay for the you know what I mean. Network TV is not giving me what the premium channels are giving. Radio should be the same way, because I feel like they always say, "Well, Scarface never," the movie Scarface never, and I'm like, if you do your studies, music is a stronger spirit than those visual images, because it's constantly going.
And everyone knows Al Pacino is not Scarface, but when it comes to hip hop, the more authentically criminal you appear to be, the more legitimate you are in that enterprise. And even when you mentioned NWA earlier, and I don't go way back, but when you get to KRS-One and Just Ice and these guys, you had to when you spoke of gangster, you had to in the album say, "Now I don't mean this kind.
Right.
I mean this." When you talk about murder, you had to make it clear it was on the mic. NWA, Dope Man, was originally a slander against those that, but over time it slowly turned. So you see with, and I know we got to watch our time here, but you see with, this came out with, I think it was, it may have been L.A. Reid. I don't know who this was, but Future did a song with Lil Wayne, Karate Chop, the remix of Karate Chop. In that he talked about beating having sex so violently it was like Emmett Till. Again, I don't know who else. I don't know if you have kids watching, etc. And Sony, they came out and they said, you know what? This is disgusting. We don't stand by this. This lyrics does not represent us. This is not our brand. They said we authorized the original version, but the remix we did not authorize. And we think Lil Wayne needs to, really think about what he said here. And really what that was, it was a reaction to violence. The entire song is about dealing drugs, young black men killing other young black men. It was released and Sony said, we totally stand by that. But this slight reference to a beloved civil rights icon, you've gone too far. Again, we can hear and say, look, there's art, but this doesn't represent us with some stuff. But the other stuff, we can't even hear that it's art for sure, but it should not be associated with our brand. And that's the sickness that exists in the soul of America.
Pastor Mike Smith, man, hey, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. You dropped some real jewels. The replay value of this is going to be, for me, is going to be a classroom session. I appreciate you taking out some time, joining with us. Hope to have you back in the future.
Thank you. It would be my joy. Thank you just for letting me speak. You said some kind words over the internet, Instagram. Thank you for the love, man. Encouraging is gold now. Peace on you and your family, and just thank you for having me on.
What are you currently building on right now? How can our viewers get direct access to you?
My wife and I are kind of in a new season, a new birth. Ministry is what we do, but there's the political, there's the racism and religion, dealing with families. We're trying to hit it in every sphere. You can visit us, michaelandconnie.com, learn a little bit more about us. But, man, I just want to support what you have going on. And just thank you for letting me serve. I hope I contributed a little bit, to the work you're doing.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. michaelandconnie.com. There it is, y'all. Pastor Mike Smith. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bless you, man. Thank you.
All right. All right, there it is, folks. Man, good stuff. Good stuff right there. He did exactly what I was hoping he would do, man. I saw the TED Talks and I was like, man, spot on. Then he made another point. I'm like, spot on. I was like, I've been saying that. I've been saying that. So finally somebody else, articulates it in a way that I couldn't. So, wait a minute. I got to go to the peanut gallery. Let's see. I see some of y'all just getting out of pocket. Cavett, 5 times 5 is 25. Of course he knew that. If you was listening with your third ear, you knew that he was going to go somewhere and come right back with that. Just got to be patient. But y'all so quick to scrutinize. Stop with all the scrutiny. We don't do scrutiny on this show. No scrutiny. This is a no scrutiny zone. All right. So there's that. Anyway, I kind of knew when I was listening to Warren G that he really didn't lay those busters down. Yeah. I mean, not sing-songy. He didn't, but he didn't have a believable presentation. But the baby, when he say I killed 2 dudes in the store, and he really killed 2 dudes in the store, like that's kind of believable. All right. Anyway. All right, we got to make room for Roland Martin. Man, the show went by fast, man. That's the beauty of this show. You never know what you're going to get and how who's going to come through and strike a match and drop fire on the show. But at this time of the show, we always like to leave on a high note, leave on a lesson with a word from an elder in a segment I like to call, where's that? Hi, Dad.
Happy everyday, brothers and sisters. This is Alpha Papa with today's reflection. Harambe, let's pull together. I read an article this weekend on how 19 black families pulled together and purchased 96.71 acres of land in Toombsboro, Georgia. The opinion article was written by Ashley Scott, and it gives us a blueprint on how we can accomplish similar transactions throughout the country. 2 years ago, my college roommate's daughter brought up the idea of purchasing some land to build a community for friends and families to live together. However, illnesses among us have prevented this idea from moving forward. Perhaps my children, nieces, and nephews, and my roommate's daughter, Miss T, can bring to fruition this idea, since we now have a blueprint. Congratulations to the Freedom Georgia Initiative for providing us with this blueprint. Peace and blessings to all. Harambe, Alpha Papa.
I was looking for the applause. Pull it together. Hey, who trying to put in on some land, man? Who needs that? You gotta get somewhere to go, because, hey, November 4th, I'm trying to build, like Akon City, man. I'm trying to have Mont City out here or something, man. All we need is a general store, gas station, liquor store, church, and that's all you really need, right? For a city, little municipal building, library, school. Let's get it, man. Let's pull it together. All right, outstanding, man. Shout out to our guest for today, Pastor Mike Smith, otherwise known as White Mike in the neighborhood when he grew up. It was outstanding stuff, man. Amazing. I'll try to get this up and post it and throw the full episode in the Patreon. As always, viewers support the Cash App Lamont King 06. Don't forget the $ and the patreon.com, Mr. Lamont King. Outstanding Peanut Gallery. I appreciate y'all. The EP, Mr. Clarkson, thank you on the technical side of the technicals. I appreciate you. And damn it, Roland Martin, man. Hey, we're gonna try to squeeze you. We couldn't really bump the pastor, man. I don't believe in that. So, Roland, if you stand by, we'll try to get you on tomorrow, man. Everybody else, be safe, man. Do something productive with your time. All right, will you?